You know, the great thing about fantasy football these days is it never really ends. There are already real money drafts going on for 2025 fantasy football season. I took a look at them, and there are some picks I think are a little questionable that might be traps in 2025. You might want to avoid these picks if you can. And if you're wondering where can there actually be drafts going on right now for 2025, well, then you need to know that Underdog is the place to play if you're a fan looking to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Not only do they have drafts going on all off season long, but you can call your shot by picking higher or lower on two or more players' stats for a shot to win real money. And Underdog is celebrating the big game this Sunday by giving everyone a no sweat entry, which means you either cash in or you get your entry fee back in bonus credit. Come join Underdog before the big game kicks off this Sunday and sign up with promo code ENDGAME to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Plus, you'll get this free Travis Kelce pick. So you already know if you've been with us for a while, we love Underdog Fantasy, not only for the pick'ems, but also because they have drafts going on all year long pretty much, and they already have drafts out for the 2025 season. So let's look at some players that I think are being drafted way too high, and let's start with A.J. Brown, currently going as pick 18 and the wide receiver 10. I don't really get this. I think this is coming off more of name value here. This guy only topped 15 PPR points 7 times all season long, and when you look at it, the Eagles situation is one of the worst situations you can have for a wide receiver because in 2024, they ranked dead last in pass attempts per game. Why? Because they have an elite defense. Oh, and they have an elite running game with Saquon Barkley. That is not a recipe for wide receiver success, and we saw that this year with A.J. Brown. Yes, he had some nice games, but he also had a lot of weeks where he was just completely invisible. A.J. Brown at pick 18, wide receiver 10, means he's probably going to be your wide receiver 1. If you go running back in the first round and you take A.J. Brown in round 2 as your wide receiver 1, is this really what you want? A guy that's only going over 15 fantasy points in less than half of his games? No, this is not what you want. I get that A.J. Brown is a stud. I get that he's a fantastic player. If the Eagles were in a situation where they threw the ball more, absolutely, this guy would be worth a first-round pick. But we've seen it the last couple years. He hasn't really been worth a first-round pick. Okay, now he's not a first-round pick. I get it. He's a second-round pick. So, okay, not a first-rounder anymore. But I still don't know if I like him here, even at this spot. I think there's wide receivers I like after him more than A.J. Brown. So I just feel like this is just name value, A.J. Brown being taken here. I think we can do better. I don't think A.J. Brown is going to be a bust or anything, but we're probably going to get something similar to what we got in 2024. I don't think that's worth pick 18, wide receiver 10. And now buckle up for this one. I can already see it. I know it's coming. I know you're going to come. The torches, the pitchforks, you're coming after me, but I don't care. It is what it is. Brock Bowers, pick 16, is way too high in fantasy football, in my opinion. You're drafting this guy as a stud wide receiver, basically a top 10 wide receiver or a top 5 running back. That's who you're passing on when you take Brock Bowers at pick 16. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Brock Bowers is going to be great. I don't think Brock Bowers is going to bust in 2025. I don't think he's going to be like Sam Laporta 2.0 or anything where tight end 1 is a rookie and then complete bust in year 2. Brock Bowers is too talented. He's too good. He's basically him and Jacoby Myers for the entire passing game in Las Vegas right now. But again, the issue here is you're passing on stud running backs and stud wide receivers to get a tight end. And look, for a tight end, he was great last year. 15.5 points per game. That's fantastic for a tight end. But you look at him outside of the QBs, only the 34th highest scoring player, and you're picking him at pick 16. And is Brock Bowers really going to get better in year 2? I mean, this guy set records as a rookie. It's really hard to set records back-to-back years. So, yeah, okay, then you can argue, well, he didn't score a lot of touchdowns. Maybe he gets more touchdowns. Sure, but he's probably going to have less receptions and yards because, again, the guy set records. Probably not going to set records again. So you're probably looking at something pretty similar to what he did last year. And if that's the case, certainly not going to be worth this pick. Also, when you look at it, Trey McBride, who actually did outscore Brock Bowers on a points per game basis, is going 16 picks later. I still think that's too high for Trey McBride. I still don't really want to take a tight end that high if I don't have to in your one tight end leagues, but I'd much rather just wait and get Trey McBride than take Brock Bowers in the beginning of round 2. In order for Brock Bowers to be worth this pick, he's going to have to get significantly better in year 2. I mean, we're going to have to talk about a guy who's going, Travis Kelce type of season here. This guy only went over 20 fantasy points 4 times last year. That is not what you would want from your wide receiver 1 or your RB1. You want more from that. I just think Brock Bowers, because he's a tight end and he was great, and I do think he will be great in 2025, but because he's a tight end, people are just a little too crazy about him right now. I would much prefer to get him where Trey McBride is going, or just wait and get Trey McBride, or just wait and get a different tight end later and give me a stud running back or wide receiver with this pick. Next up is Chase Brown going as pick 28, running back 12. Now, I will say, if somehow the Bengals do nothing at running back, if they don't bring in any major free agents, if they don't draft, a running back in, say, round 2, round 3, one of the stud running backs in this class, and there are a lot of them, then okay, this pick is great for Chase Brown. But I don't see the Bengals doing that. Do we really think they're going into next season wanting to give Chase Brown 90% of the touches again? That's not really what Chase Brown is built for. He's not built to be a guy that gets 90% of the touches and plays all the snaps and, is a workhorse running back. Chase Brown is a good player. He's an explosive runner. He's a good pass catcher. But he's not a guy you want out there that much, and I don't think the Bengals want him out there that much. I got to think the Bengals are going to do something this offseason to take the pressure off Chase Brown. Again, whether it's free agent, whether it's a rookie. So I just think right now this price is too high for Chase Brown. I think once they do sign a big-time free agent, although there's not a lot of good free agent running backs, I will say that. But if they do sign a capable free agent, and or draft a good rookie running back, we're going to see his ADP drop. So I think right now his ADP is way too high. People just assuming Chase Brown is going to still be the guy in Cincinnati. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we're going to see this ADP drop, and the Bengals are going to do something at running back. And then right behind him, we see Tyreek Hill going off as the wide receiver 14. Again, I got to believe this is just on name value. We're talking about a guy that is going to turn 31 years old on March 1st. Didn't even look great last year. We did not see the same guy. Did not look as explosive as years past. I know he had a wrist injury, but does your wrist affect your explosiveness? I don't think so. And then you look at it also when you look at average separation score on fantasy points. He was 33rd among all wide receivers in terms of that. Not what we want to see from a guy. That's signs that maybe he's lost a little bit of a step. Maybe he's going to lose a little bit more of a step. But also, even if you say, hey, he's not dust, he's still great. Okay, that is fair. But look at the Miami offense. A, it looks like defenses kind of figured out this Mike McDaniel offense. But B, we have new guys involved in the offense. Jonnu Smith, Devon Achane. These guys were target monsters. Look at Tyreek Hill's target shares over the last 3 years in Miami. 3 years ago, 31% target share. 2 years ago, 33% target share. Last year, 21% target share. That is not an elite target share. That is not what you want from a stud wide receiver. Now, I get he's not going as a stud wide receiver anymore. He's now an early 3rd round pick, but I still think this is too optimistic. I think, look, it happens. The decline happens, and when it happens, it doesn't go the other way. It just continues to decline. I think that's what we're seeing with Tyreek Hill, sadly. I think the best days are behind him. He's lost a little bit of a step, and now he's got way more competition for targets. I'm still okay drafting Tyreek Hill. Again, I don't think he's going to be an outright bust, but, we're probably not going to see the guy we saw in his prime, and hopefully we don't see the guy we saw last year who was an absolute bust, but I still don't think he's going to be worth an early 3rd round pick in fantasy. And then finally, Joe Mixon. I can almost get behind this pick 41, running back 15, but I have my concerns. Namely, we saw down the stretch last year, he really started to slow down. After a great start to the year where this guy was ripping off long runs, and it's like, who is this guy? I've never seen Joe Mixon this explosive, just ripping off long runs. Well, we saw down the stretch, he was not that same guy. From week 9 on, he finished as the RB15, which you say, okay, he's being drafted as RB15, Chris. Isn't this fair value? But that was propped up by that huge 35-point game. In 5 of his last 9 games, he gave you 10 or less PPR points. Just did not look as good. Didn't look as good in the playoffs either as far as, that explosiveness, ripping off those long runs. Now, I know Houston probably will and should address the offensive line, but my worry here is we're talking about a running back that's going to be 29 years old, never really been a highly efficient runner his entire career. I just don't see it. Maybe he'll get off to another hot start and everybody will say, you were wrong about Mixon, and then he'll cool off again down the stretch. Not to mention, there are running backs going after him like Chuba Hubbard, Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery, Kenneth Walker. Like, are we really sure Joe Mixon is going to be significantly better than those guys? I mean, I'm not saying those guys are going to necessarily be better than Mixon, but I don't think it's going to be a drastic difference. So why not just wait and take one of those other running backs instead? So again, Joe Mixon, I think he'll be fine in 2025. I don't think he's going to be an outright bust, but I also think he's going to be one of those picks that you're going to look back on and be like, I wish I took somebody else in that spot. So now you know 5 guys that you might want to avoid at their ADP in fantasy football drafts, but who are 6 guys that were bust last year but are going to rebound big this year? You can find out in this video right here.